So hello and welcome to our first ever series of podcasts. This is episode 4 of 5 for Humber and North Yorkshire AHP Faculty. My name is Keely Summers and I'm a diagnostic radiographer by profession. I now work as AHP strategic lead across Humber and North Yorkshire. This podcast is going to cover everything to do with, well, not everything to do with, but education and training and in our workforce. So I'm delighted to say that I've got 3 AHP colleagues here, all that have a role in education, all different roles. So I'm going to hand over to them to introduce themselves. I'll hand to you first, Claire.
Yeah, hi there, thanks. I'm Claire Ardito. I'm the Regional Head of Allied Health Professions for NHS England in the North East and Yorkshire.
Hi, I'm Carrie Edwards. I'm an occupational therapist by background and I'm currently Associate Head of School, Head of Allied Health, so that's OT, physio, paramedics.
Hello, I'm Peter Eiliff. I'm an orthotist working for a provider of orthotic services across the ICB, so supporting colleagues in their education journeys.
So I thought we'd start off and just say a little bit about our role and how education fits into our role. Do you want to start first, Kerry? Because you're very much an academic, aren't you?
Yeah.
You work at York St John's.
Yeah, so I've been involved in education for 27 years at York St John University, and we started with OT and physio. They've been there for over 20 years. Paramedics started about 3 years ago. So with all those we have a lot of responsibility as a team from the time they come in, which will be tomorrow, right through until they graduate. So we need to work with our service providers, you guys, to make sure students are fit for practice and succeed and successful in their practice.
Yeah, and then I work in the AHP faculty and I work alongside very closely with Claire, who you work for NHS England, don't you, with workforce education. Do you just want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so NHS England has a responsibility within the workforce training and education function to ensure sufficient supply of the workforce into not just the NHS, but obviously broader into social care settings, into the private sector, etc. And so we've really clearly work very closely with our academic partners in our higher education institutions and our provider organisations through the NHS to ensure that all of those that are training receive high quality practice education specifically, because that's a really important part. If you think about how allied health professions train, that practice education component is really, really important, and we want to ensure that they have really good high quality experiences.
Yeah, and definitely, and that's throughout the whole career of AHPs, that practice education into it from the starting and then going on. And obviously, you are a member of our faculty, aren't you, Peter? And you've got a real passion about promoting
Orthotics and prosthetics.
Put my teeth in. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your profession and how you do practice education and make sure that goes throughout the careers as well?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is it's difficult to pronounce prosthetics and orthotics, but
Thank you.
After nearly 40 years, I've kind of got the hang of it. But it is really important, I think, as Claire alluded to then. So we've got the journey with the HEIs, the educators. So we've got to enable our undergraduates to have a fantastic placement experience. And that's quite challenging for the smaller professions where we're in quite small units. And in our space, it's fairly difficult in orthotics and extremely difficult in prosthetics at the moment. So we need to be creative and we need to learn from other AHPs who've perhaps looked at some of the challenges there and the models. And I think one of the things I found quite helpful on reflection was, as a sideline, I did a bit of sports coaching. And I think that taught me about education, because I was responsible for children to understand their learning. And I think that then enabled me to reflect back on the educational journey of our undergraduates and then those in preceptorship roles and throughout their career, and think more holistically about the learning process and how different people learn in different ways. And we have to be quite creative to support and facilitate that, and not just in our little silos. So we have to teach our technical superpower, which is all about components and bits of equipment and enabling people to walk, but also we have to support the teaching of our undergraduates and postgraduates to be holistic practitioners who are thinking about how these people are going to use the equipment that we provide them in their home space, in their workspace. So it's enabling and facilitating. So it's really just finding those pillars of knowledge underneath and understanding that we all learn differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly what, one of my learned experiences is needing to step away and reflect sometimes that somebody else will learn and choose to work in quite a different way to me, and neither is right or wrong.
Yeah, and I think also you said we need to learn off other AHPs, but we need to learn off other professions. And one of the things that I quite like is interprofessional work. And I know that you at York St John's are now bringing that into your induction, aren't you? And it's happening more and more that all professions work together. And I think for AHPs that's really important, because we're 14 professions and sometimes we don't know what each other does, never mind other professions knowing what we do. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is the first year we're doing it on campus. So tomorrow we're expecting 250 health students. They'll all be together for the first session of the week and their last session of the week. And in between they'll have their programme-specific sessions. And we feel it's really important that they get a sense of their own profession and a sense of belonging to that profession, but also a sense of working with others and how that might be. And rather than doing it by modules, we've chosen to do it along the patient journey. So we'll have specific sessions where lots of people will be involved. So one of the current things we do, the paramedics team lead, is a simulation day. So they'll have like a car accident on site, and lots of different professions are involved in that, but also including like journalism, drama. It's a whole university event so that students get to learn to work with others, explain their own roles, and that's inherent now from the day they walk onto programme.
Yeah.
And I think from my perspective, that's massively valuable, because when they're out in the work context, then that's exactly how they'll be working.
Absolutely.
So to be familiar with the nuance of their own profession and how that adds value into that interprofessional context, because there's room for duplication, but there's also room to hold on to your own professional autonomy and your own professional competency, skills and capabilities. And I think those only work to their maximum when you're working with the other professions that you're working alongside you. And I think all of that adds to a much better experience for the patient and others that you're providing the service to. So it's really fantastic, the opportunities that we're seeing in education now in terms of new innovative ways of delivering that learning and education. And that was a great example.
Yeah, and we've got an AHP practice educator framework now as well that can help us along and implement that. So what is your thoughts around that? How can we as AHPs make sure that we are going to be implementing that framework? Over to you, Claire.
So it's imperative to help support the growth of practice education that we need to see for the long-term workforce plan. I'm hoping most people have heard about the long-term workforce plan, but which basically is a really important progression for the NHS workforce. So big growth, but also then to support that, then we will absolutely need really high quality practice education. So the framework supports that. We have to really see a way to support our supervisors in practice, because as we see it now, there's a huge expectation on them. So having a framework that will help them to see where their career and capabilities need to develop, supported by organisations who need to say, actually, we need to step into this space to support our supervisors. They need the educational resources made available to them, not just to those that they're training. It works both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does, yeah. Are you able to implement the career framework in P&O? I'm going to call it P&O.
No, yeah. P&O is good. We identify as P&O. So I think it is quite challenging when we work for private companies, but it is probably not as challenging as we've historically realised. I've been on a bit of a journey in the last few years because I went back into the professional body and work with them and work with Claire and colleagues with HE, now NHS England, and learnt a bit more about the education space, and then have worked with now the faculty and the council locally. And actually what I'm finding is there's loads of resource out there, and it's not ring-fenced for people employed by the NHS. You can access this as a private provider if you are working in providing frontline NHS services. And absolutely, my sort of take the coaching, that gave me a little bit of a window into educational theory, but I think we really need to supercharge what our supervisors and preceptors can do through either informal connections within their locality, but also, going on to PG certs and things like that, so they get recognised qualification. A bit of status associated with education doesn't help. And then also valuing our educators. And I think sometimes we as a profession can possibly make their jobs a little bit more difficult than it might be. And then maybe if we can step away and reflect, this is hard work, working in the universities at the moment. It is pressured. And as in practice, we can really support that. So I think, we're all on that journey. We've all got busy jobs and all the rest of it. But as Claire says, through the NHS long-term plan, there's a huge ask of us. We know why it's there, because we all do fantastic things to improve the health of the population we work. But there is this need, and it's only through collaboration and understanding your environment, I think you can make your contribution as a profession.
And if you think about the 4 pillars of practice and education being a really strong pillar, it's everybody's responsibility. So where you may not have seen yourself as an educator in the role that you're currently in, actually everybody has a responsibility for education. So recognising now that all of our roles out in practice have a higher level of complexity, a higher level of requirement to become more specialist, understanding what your role is as an educator as part of one of those pillars of practice is really, really important. And if you're not sure what your role is then yet, please do chat to your employer, chat to other colleagues, maybe chat to other supervisors who you consider to be, more experienced in that space, because this is about, you recognising that you'll have a lot of opportunity to really support this agenda, and it's really, really important.
Can I just come back on that, Keely? I think, like Claire makes a really good point. It's really challenging because we've got waiting lists and we've got lots of activity to deliver, and we're all getting measured by that with the KPIs. But as providers, stroke employers, we have a duty to find the space with the support of those who commission our services to make sure that we can operate as educators, and it is incumbent on us as registered practitioners to do so. So we've got the research piece that challenges us as well with the evidence-based practice, but education, as Claire says, absolutely fundamental. And I think particularly with a small profession where we're kind of in a little bit of a technical space, and we love our equipment and, the being able to cast for a patient or take measures and all the rest of it. And that's really important that we can come up with a technical prescription that meets that patient's need. But there's a whole piece in the role which is around looking after the workforce and investing in colleagues, supporting colleagues in education, those in practice, those in other AHP areas. I think if we work together, we are the 3rd largest workforce in the NHS. But because we're so, I wouldn't say siloed, but there are little sort of barriers between us, that if we can ease those down a bit and work collaboratively, I think we can do great things together.
Yeah, and I think we've got to do better in the AHP community of having that time to be an educator and have that time to reflect. Because we're doing a project in the AHP faculty of finding us practice educators and seeing what our AHPs look like in Humber and North Yorkshire as well, and trying to promote the good of what we can achieve if we add practice education, bring education into it. We're always learning. I mean, education in our profession comes in all different ways as well, doesn't it? I mean, I've carried on studying all the way through my career because I enjoy it, but, you can just be in your clinical education, can't you?
Yeah,
so
obviously, we're seeing some real progress in terms of development of career frameworks for our AHP workforce across the whole breadth of the professional groups. And I think where we've seen some really great progress in the last 18 months or so is in the enhanced practice space. and that sort of conduit between preceptorship and foundation level practice through to advanced practice, and opportunities there for accredited practice where some of the professions may not have had that before. I'm just going to promote here the Enhanced Clinical Practice Apprenticeship that's available now for all AHPs, profession specific for 10 out of the 15 at the moment, but we're hoping that ultimately that all AHP professions will be able to access that. And this is a funded training route. Speak to your employer about what opportunities that might have for you, particularly if you don't feel that you've had opportunity to really access accredited training up to now. So do look that out, and there's plenty on the NHS England website.
Is that where they can find the universities?
If they look up Enhanced Clinical Practice on the NHS England website, that'll give them the information.
And what level is that, Claire, or is it different in different areas?
So we try not to relate it to banding, and I think everyone wants to know what training and what banding. But you're talking about mid-level career where you're working in a specialist area of practice, high level of complexity and requiring increased skills and capability. I think we probably would avoid saying which banding, but it certainly sits above sort of entry level.
Is it a master's level?
So for the apprenticeship, it's actually can be delivered at level 6 or level 7.
Right.
We're recommending that it's delivered at level 7 because of the, particularly in the clinical pillar, the level of complexity that we'd expect to see.
Yeah.
So Claire and I have worked together in this area, and I think, I'm really keen that in prosthetics and orthotics, we take the opportunity you've given us. And I think this is a bit of a shout out because I think a lot of colleagues are, although the professional body is putting it out there and there's a lot of social media, it's still not always percolating through to the coalface that this is an opportunity. I do want to give a bit of a shout out to North Links Trust, because slightly different on our apprenticeship programme. My employer doesn't pay into the levy because we're not big enough. But when we put someone through the apprenticeship programme at the BSc level, NLAG gifted us part of their levy, which was great. They're enough left over that it didn't compromise the training and education in their own trust. But so I think you can then get, no matter what size organisation you are, you can access the funds for training. The same will apply for the enhanced practice. It does hit the that sweet spot of those people, I think, who very often are prone to thinking about their career journey and perhaps feeling that they need that extra level of recognition and that lift. So I think it's a great opportunity, and there is a curriculum for prosthetics and orthotics now. I'm now asking my team to look at that as a route for staff development, because it's for that kind of, we won't mention bands, but if you're kind of sitting between a 6 and a 7 equivalent, we don't even have those bands. But, I kind of know that it's that springboard, isn't it, to take you from post-preceptorship foundation level to that next level and get that recognition and learn. And like you, Keely, I love to learn, and many colleagues do.
Yeah.
So I think it gives you that kind of, I've got this qualification, it's recognised, I've put something in, I've got something back, but then it is a springboard to higher levels of practice. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and I think, sorry,
No, it's okay.
I think we're coming to a good place where we've got a good career pathway right from level 3. So you've got your apprenticeships with your support workers, and now we've got profession specific in some of the areas, aren't we, at level 5? And then that's a stepping stone, so we can really support that career going all the way. And you don't have to, but it's there if you want to.
If I can just say, before I hand over to my colleague over there, I think you're right, the framework's there, which is brilliant. But I think as employers and commissioners of services, I think we need to do the hard yards now to make sure people can access those opportunities, and that when they complete the qualification, there is a role for them that reflects that enhanced level.
So I was going to say, but in education, there's lots of step-ons and step-offs from level 3 to PhD. And universities are thinking about how to enable a range of services for people, and also some bespoke study days, because not everybody wants to study in an academic sense, but might want to come on a course to learn a clinical skill. So, I'd encourage you to talk to your local university to see what is available, and if there's enough interest, then they'll be able to set up bespoke training days, bespoke models. We're looking at interprofessional things as well for advanced practice. So we currently have some respiratory modules. We have injection therapy. We might be looking at mental health in the future.
Another thing that I like now that universities are doing, they're actually doing part-time, because not everybody wants full-time courses, do they? So
Absolutely.
Now you're offering part-time courses, so you're being inclusive, so diverse, that fit in with people, workloads or life balance. So, yeah, that was never available when I was...
Well, I was in a meeting last week. We're just launching a Masters in Research for Health, September 2025, but looking at delivering that remotely, so online, so that people can meet together as a group as well as, in their own time, so some recorded things. Because I think one of the challenges for clinicians is getting time to do those things. So, the university is trying to be really inclusive and offer things in very different ways. But also we recognise that actually being part of a group of learners is also important, because it can be quite lonely. I'm studying as well at the moment, and you're on your own. So it's nice to connect with others who are also feeling lonely, are also challenged with time, because that's normal. But
Yes.
If I can say something there, so I think one of the most formative things in my career was the opportunity. I did have to do a part-time master's when I worked at Derby Royal Infirmary, and it was research methods at Loughborough University, and it was taught by some fantastic professors in ergonomics, and a huge range of experiences. But it was MDT, and I was I was the only orthotist there, so they all had to work out how to pronounce my profession. And then, but with physios, podiatrists, nurses, and being in that environment took me out of my own professional bubble. And showed, because we all had presentations to do, which were work-based, and it just opened my eyes immensely to the opportunity of, while I was learning, it taught me a lot about the workplace and the variety of things that colleagues were doing in other disciplines. So I think that if the opportunity presents, that's certainly a great thing to access.
I don't think we can underestimate the value of learning from others who are also learning.
Yeah, definitely. So going forward, Claire, as we have to reform the NHS, how do you see AHP's roles going forward? What are our priorities in education?
So as it stands, certainly in the last few years, we've seen some massive growth in reform. From my perspective, I've seen a huge willingness and desire to reform how we learn. I think innovation is probably a key enabler for that. And I was just thinking about how the digital agenda can really support and help us to really do things in a way we'd never have envisaged before. And even just the use of the technology, as Peter was describing, is massively important. Simulation, practice education that's simulated. We know we've got to do things differently and not consider necessarily the way we've always done things as the right way. There's definitely a place for all of that, but there's also a huge space for thinking about the digital agenda. But for me, to be able to really do more with the digital agenda, we've got to level out a little bit. And I still think there's so much discrepancy in terms of those who can access digital technology, those who feel comfortable with digital technology, and perhaps those who are just scared about it as well. And I think from my perspective, we've got a huge opportunity here to think creatively, but also to bring those people with us that perhaps at the moment are really nervous of that space. So I say that from someone who's probably a little bit in the middle, but would love to embrace technology more in terms of education provision. So I'm hoping to hear from you, Kerry, in terms of what you're doing at your university to really promote that agenda.
Yeah, because we've got more courses coming on board, there is more money that comes with that, which brings more opportunity. So we've currently got 2 simulation wards that are primarily for nursing, but others can access that with lots of facilities. So lots of simulation can happen. But it's not just the technology. Sometimes, the students that come to us have never been on a ward because they've not had the experience or opportunity to do work experience. So coming onto a ward with lots of high tech is really scary. So, we can facilitate that in a safe learning environment. We're starting to involve patient actors and service users so they get to practice their skills in a safe learning environment before going on placement and after they've been on placement, so they can connect their learning with their experience. We've got 4 consultation rooms and we can beam by video. I don't know how this happens, but it's by magic. The technicians can beam that down to a classroom so students can role play and the rest of their colleagues can see that. And it's a really powerful learning tool, particularly for those softer skills or communication skills particularly. So I think there's loads of opportunity that we're beginning to embrace. But also we have these amazing facilities and lots of our partners are saying, can we use some of these? These are amazing.
Yeah, and we've been using them facilities for like careers fairs and doing work experience a little bit different, a simulated work experience and reaching out to students that may be thinking about that job. They learn so much more. You can see them interactive than just actually talking about it. So we've got that side of it as well for the careers fairs and doing work experience a little bit different. So yeah, we just need to P&O to come there as well because P&O is very much a small and it's getting that. You're coming to talk in the faculty, aren't you? End of this month, end of next month, isn't it? About P&O for us to understand what it's all about.
Yeah,
education.
We are the smallest AHP profession, and I wear that with a badge of pride. Rightly or wrongly, but I think it steps off into, gives you a bit of context to where we come from because it's the smallest AHP profession and then we split off into orthotics and prosthetics anyway. So that level of fragmentation is a challenge for us. But I do think, so we don't have a programme in this part of the world. The nearest programme for P&O is Salford. There's also one in Glasgow that does the bachelor's course, and then we've got a compress master's at Keele. And an apprenticeship programme at Derby, and that's it, UK-wide, just the 4 programmes. But I know at Salford they've got a great simulation facility and they're taking their prosthetic and orthotic students through that because, as you rightly described, we have to go up on wards, and that can be emotionally quite challenging, particularly if you're not familiar with how people behave and what you'll see in that environment, and you need to conduct yourself in a reassuring and professional way. Now, if you've been through that in a safe, simulated environment, I think that's really powerful and reassuring. And I think when we talk about preceptorship a lot, we talk about confidence, don't we? It's a real key word with preceptorship. So when people have come through the programme, we want them to be confident in their role. And if they can draw on those facilitated, simulated experiences, I think that really gives a super boost to their confidence if it's moderated in the right way.
And I think it's an opportunity. You talked about coaching. I think that's really important role for educators, both in university and in placement. We're giving people feedback so they can get better. And it's really important that we do that in a supportive way to build confidence. And I think a lot of students do get confidence through their placement experience from their educators.
Yeah, there's a lot of coaching going on now, and we've got action learning sets as well, which is a good way. So you bring a challenge through an action learning set, and instead of giving somebody the what's the word I'm looking for?
The answer.
The answer, that's the word. Simple as that. You draw it out, so you start reflecting on it and you start talking about it. And then I went to one and it was really hard because I think in the NHS we do like to give the answer, don't we? But I found it really useful. So
we always like to find a solution rather than actually letting someone work through the problem on their own. I think in thinking about reform, I think it's important that we don't forget the opportunities as you progress much further through your career. And I think certainly from my perspective, we are really doing a huge amount now in those advanced practice roles to promote the value and the role of the AHP professions. So in a way, I think that from my perspective, demonstrating a huge amount of support, not just for the individual professions, but also how they can really add value to the whole of the career, the whole of the patient pathway. So I think we shouldn't forget that, because I think, you know, there's a nervousness, isn't there, to push yourself out of your comfort zone when you're developing in your career. So my thoughts are, you know, have a leap of faith. Just take the opportunities when they arise. You know, you might not see yourself in that role as an advanced practitioner, but actually, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were talking about that earlier, weren't we, Claire? How did we end up where we are by just going for the opportunities and keeping going?
Embrace the imposter syndrome in us all.
Yes,
I think that's a key thing. You know,
that's a really
it's
good
not it's not unusual or inappropriate to feel really challenged by those steps, but having the courage and the support of others, I think, is, you know, having your mentors. You talked about your coaching, but there's also mentorship, isn't it? I would say to anybody that really wants to focus on their career, get a mentor, and then from time to time draw on coaching, understand the difference. You know, if you understand education, you can then understand what's appropriate and when and what role it is and what you can give. But I think, you know, we all feel that moment of, we're all feeling it before we came in here, wasn't it?
Absolutely, well nervous. And then look, we've just chatted away and half an hour has actually taken the time up. So has anybody got any closing statements that they want to say before we sign off? I think yours was a good one, to say advice of leap of faith.
I think at work, it's about people working together.
Yeah.
Whether it's you working with your mentor, you're working with your organisation, working with students, there's a lot of collaboration. And we're all quite small groups in the NHS, but if we work together, we have a real strong voice.
So,
I suppose picking up on Claire's point, and I think that point about ACP, it's really quite difficult in a really small profession like ours. But I know a colleague that's an ACP. She went through you know, exactly, why not? If you're brave enough and resilient enough, and you have good people around you who support you, then I do think all these things are possible, whilst being difficult. But then, if it was easy, why would you do it?
So thank you very much. Our last top tip is take them opportunities when they arise. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Bye.